Welcome back to the poker vlog. This is episode number 141. In this one, we're playing 5-10 at Bellagio. But before we get started, I have one announcement to make. There are brand new McJiggity's t-shirts available for sale. I'll have a link down below in the description box. Pick one up. All right, let's go ahead and begin. The weather's a bit bleak in Las Vegas today, but life is good because we're about to be grinding. Bellagio has been my home lately. I've been running well, and I've really been enjoying playing. We'll be hopping into the 5-10 game. I buy in for 1,500, which is the max, and I take my seat in the must move. Early on in the session, I'm dealt ace-10 suited in the hijack. I raised it to 30. The small blind calls. We're heads up. The flop comes ace-queen-jack with 2 diamonds. We have top pair and a gutter. Small blind checks. Most of the time, I'll be way ahead. If my opponent doesn't have a flush draw, then there won't be very many bad turns for me. I check for pot control, deception, and to see if I can induce a bluff from my opponent if he has air. The turn is the 9 of hearts. We pick up an open-ender. Small blind bets 50. The sizing is certainly on the larger side. Maybe he has a strong hand, or maybe he's trying to buy it. Either way, I'm happy to call. The river is the 7 of spades. The opponent slows down and checks. He may not have much after all. My hand is under-repped after checking back the flop, and I sense that the small blind isn't very strong. I'm going to bet an amount that can get called by a variety of worse hands. I throw 30 out there for value. Might even call with something as weak as 10-9. Sure enough, we get the call. I proudly turn over the hand. Guess where we're at? It's a little place called Value Town, USA. That's right, the player has a 9. The problem is that it's accompanied by a jack. He turned 2 pair and has me beat, so I actually took myself to Value Town, and I've got 1 foot in Stuckville. Not too long after, we pick up Jack-10 offsuit in the big blind. Under the gun +1 opens at 30. The player who beat me in the previous hand calls in middle position. The button calls. He's a friend of mine that I've known since I first moved to Las Vegas in 2012. I've got a hand that can sometimes be difficult to play, especially out of position and multi-way, but I'm out for revenge, and you guys have seen the recommended range when that's the case. I'm not going anywhere. I call. We go 4 ways to the flop. It's 9-7-4 rainbow. We have a gutter with 2 overs. I check to the pre-flop raiser. He opened from early position, so this isn't a great flop for his range. He checks. Middle position player checks. It's very unlikely that he'd have a strong hand and would allow 3 other opponents a chance of potentially seeing a free card. The button fires for 50. He could have all the sets, perhaps some straight draws, maybe just a 1-pair hand, and maybe air with some backdoor draws. I don't want to flat just to try and hit an 8. In my opponent's minds, I certainly could have checked initially with a strong hand. I raised a 180 to hopefully win immediately. Still, if I get called, I have a decent backup plan to drill the nuts. I'm mostly concerned about getting the button to fold. Even if under the gun +1 has aces, for instance, calling my raise while still having the original better behind him would possibly put him in a dangerous spot. Luckily for me, all the players fold immediately. We take an aggressive line that works out. A nice pot comes our way to help us get out of the hole. We're going to need a bit more help though, and we get it in the form of pocket aces. I open to 30 in the cutoff. The opponent who beat me in the first hand wants a piece. He calls from the big blind. We're heads up in position. The dealer puts out 10-6 deuce rainbow. There's very little to be worried about. It's not too coordinated of a board. The big blind checks. I bet 30. The player calls almost immediately. The turn is the deuce of spades. There shouldn't be too many deuces in my opponent's range. The big blind checks. We're going for value again. I make it 70. The opponent takes a bit longer with this decision, but still calls. We've got him hooked. We just need to reel him in from max pain. The river is another deuce. We make a boat the hard way. The big blind checks. He's going to be making the vlog the hard way. I crank up the heat, betting 180. I don't think that he'll fold deuces full of 10s for this price. That seems like his most probable hand. The gentleman isn't loving it. He suspects that he may not have the winner. Maybe I'd play this the same way with a bluff, or something like ace-8 of spades though. I'm rooting for a call. The big blind has spent so much time in the tank that David Blaine is getting jealous of his abilities. Ultimately, the player puts in calling chips. We turn over the rockets. I imagine that he's not going to have us beat. The player doesn't seem too disappointed or too surprised to find out that we had the hand that we were representing the whole time. We win a good-sized pot and are no longer residents of Stuckville. In this one, we've got ace-jack offsuit in the big blind. Our primary opponent so far in this episode limps in from the hijack. Cutoff raises to 40, small blind calls. I'm getting a discount, I call for 30 more. The limper calls, we go 4 ways to the flop. It's 9-6-3, all diamonds. We've got the nut flush draw with 2 overs. Small blind checks, I check in anticipation of seeing what the pre-flop raiser's gonna do. The hijack and cutoff both check. We're seeing a free one, it's the deuce of clubs. Small blind checks, there's a lot of money up for grabs on a board that's good for my range, and I have the best draw. I bet 140. Plan A is to win immediately, plan B is a contraceptive. Without thinking much, the hijack quickly raises to 300. The cutoff and small blind both fold. Since I have the nut blocker, I wasn't expecting to get raised, especially to such a small amount. Feels like a let me see where I'm at type of move. I don't know exactly where he's at, but I know where he's not. The player has 1,000 total, the perfect amount for me to jam and put him to the ultimate test. There's no snap call. Instead, the player has more of a why on earth did I raise look on his face. It's 700 more for him to stick around. If he has 2 pair or a set, he might be thinking that he could be drawing slim. If he has a better hand like a straight or a smaller flush, he could be drawing stone dead if he's up against the hand that I'm representing. I need you all to take a second to hit the like and subscribe buttons right now to get him to fold. Thanks, dudes. You've done it. He actually folds rather quickly compared to how long he took on the river decision in the previous hand. Maybe he didn't have much, maybe he had a strong hand and just believes the story that we were trying to tell. That's the second bluff that we've gotten through today. This one is more special since we wagered it all with a 3-bet jam for a much larger pot. We went from being stuck right away to being up 700 on the session, and we've done it with mostly heart. Next we pick up Jack 10 suited under the gun +1. There's a new player at the table who had to post 10. Because of that, I raised to 40 instead of 30. The button calls, his name is Lee. The big blind calls as well. We go 3 ways to the flop, becomes 10-3 deuce with 2 clubs and 1 spade. We have top pair and a backdoor flush draw. The big blind checks. This isn't a board that's going to be great for my under the gun +1 opening range. I can have pocket 10s, but I won't have sets of 3s or deuces. I check for pot control. The button believes that he could be best. He fires for 60. The big blind folds. My decision's easy. I call. There aren't many good turns though. We're heads up. The dealer puts out the deuce of hearts. It's one of the few decent cards because it reduces the amount of set combinations that my opponent might have. I check. The player isn't feeling quite as confident anymore. He checks back. This is great to see because he should be betting almost all the hands that are as good or better than mine. Maybe he has some kind of small or medium pocket pair below 10s. The river is the king of spades. The flush draw misses. This is a card that's better for my range than it should be for the button. If I check, it'll get checked back a lot. I make a small bet at 80 because I want hands worse than mine to call. It's kind of a paralyzing bet. The opponent appears to be going through all the options in his head. He pulls out either calling or raising chips and thinks better of it and puts them back in his stack. In the end, he gives me the nice hand pat on the table as he tosses his cards into the muck. I'm glad we win that one. I show him the 10 of spades, not to say I bluffed you, but to let him know I likely had him beat and that he made a good fold. He sees me filming, and he comes over to tell me that he recognizes me.
Now I know who you are.
What's up, dude?
Hey, you're that dude, right?
Turns out he's a big fan of Little Caesars Pizza, and he recognizes me from a commercial that I did when I was 4. That was 29 years ago. We get called over to the main game. It's usually a bit tougher than the must move. It doesn't take too long before we get involved in a hand. I've got ace-jack offsuit in the cutoff. I open to 30. A buddy of mine who I talked about earlier at the previous table is now on my left. He calls in the small blind. We're heads up. The flop comes Jack 8-7 with 2 spades. We have top, and a backdoor spade draw. The small blind checks. I bet 40 for value. The small blind calls. I want to see complete blanks going forward. The turn is the 4 of clubs. 6-5 makes it straight. It's good other than that. The small blind checks. If he has a jack or a flush draw, he probably won't fold to a larger bet. And I have to protect my hand. I'm not checking back. I make it 110. The small blind calls. The river is the 3 of clubs. It's another good one. The opponent checks. He would have 3-bet pre-flop with queens or better and would have raised at some point along the way with 2 pair or better. I'm confident that I have the best hand. If he has a jack, he should be able to call another large bet on the river. If he has a missed flush draw, he won't really be able to call a bet of any size, so I bet 300 to target those worst jacks. As soon as I get my bet out there, my buddy folds. I assume he bricks with spades. I show him that I had it, so we drag in the pot. I switch seats to sit next to my friend and pick up ace-5 suited on the button. Under the gun opens at 30. A player who just sat down calls in middle position. 3-betting or calling both seem fine. Since a pre-flop raise came from early position, I prefer to call in order to ideally hit a flush. That's what I do. We go 3 ways to the flop. It comes ace-ace-jack rainbow. We flop trips in position. Under the gun checks. Middle position player bets 40. Okay, I call. Surprisingly, under the gun calls as well. I'm not feeling that confident about trips. This is why I wanted to hit a flush. The turn is the 8 of clubs. There we go, we pick up the draw. Under the gun checks. Getting 2 calls on the previous street doesn't slow down the middle position player. He fires for 140. Did he just flop a boat or something? I'm concerned the under the gun player could have flopped trips or a boat as well. He's still lurking around like a little lurker. I'm never folding. I call, but I may need help or I could potentially already be drawing dead. At least the under the gun player folds. It's heads up. The river is another 8. We don't have kicker problems anymore necessarily. We've improved to a boat. This is when I find out that the opponent watches the YouTube channel. I'm a bit caught off guard since it's right in the middle of the hand. I'm trying to figure out how to extract the most money from him. My initial thought is to bet large and try and get him off a chop. There's some chance that he has ace-jack and is trying to trap me, and I don't want him to fold if he happens to have pocket jacks, or possibly a single jack as one of his whole cards. I target hands that are weaker than mine, put out 100. The middle position player is named Amit, and Amit is not looking too happy about the bet. Eventually, we get the call. I flip over the full house. We're not chopping. I made as king jack of hearts. We milked him on the river. There's nothing I enjoy more than fleecing viewers. It's been tough for people to get my dollars today. Sometimes I just hand them out, but aside from that first hand, things have been running smoothly. We're up almost 1,300 on the session. Here we have a terrible camera angle, an ace-3 suited in the big blind. The button opens at 30. I defend. We're heads up. We get the camera situated, and the flop comes 7-4-3 with 2 hearts. We have a piece, but not much. I check. The button checks back. The turn is another 3. We've been upgraded to trips. I don't want this to check through. I bet 50. Trips may not be good enough. The button raises to 130. This puts me in an odd spot. She either has a monster and is probably ahead, or she's bluffing. I don't want to make the pot bigger if I'm behind. I don't want her to fold if she's bluffing. I call to see how it's going to play out on the river. The dealer puts out the 5 of spades. Any six makes it straight. I don't love it. I check. The button isn't giving up. She bets 100. Calling river bets is usually a losing play. I'm just getting such a good price. I match the 100. The button turns over queen 3 of spades. We've got that beat. It actually ends up being a nice river card for her because she might have increased the bet size if it were a deuce, for instance. That's the last interesting hand of the session. The game gets short and it's time to go, but before heading out, I say goodbye to somebody who brought me some good luck in a recent previous vlog. Hey, Set Genius. What's up, dude?
Doing good.
All right, I'm Mitt.
Brad?
Good playing with you, man.
Good playing with you, man.
Session's over. I won 1540 over 3 hours. Got a couple big bluffs through early on and then just ran really well after that. And that's kind of been the story the last several videos. In Florida, I got wrecked. I lost 6K. I've gotten all that back now and then some. And I'm just enjoying playing poker. And that wasn't necessarily the case, you know, while I was not running well in Florida. Bellagio fountains are going off behind me. Great day. Going out for flaming fajitas later. I'm also very excited about that. And this has been a fun session. Now that work's over, I'm able to relax and take in some of the sights in Las Vegas. I really love the city. I cap off the night with some margaritas and Mexican food, one of my favorite local restaurants. It's tough to beat Juan's Flaming Fajitas. That's it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons because it helps out the channel a ton. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I'm happy to get back to you. Don't forget to pick up your McJiggity's t-shirt and be on the lookout for the next video. That one's gonna be awesome. I was actually pretty excited about how this one turned out as well. It's a pretty cool session with a lot of interesting hands, but the next one is gonna be even better. So stay tuned for that. Good luck at the tables. Hope you're all staying safe, and I'll see you next time.